Thanks so much for joining us on Fresh from the Studio. We are very honored to have Hannah Spector, Elizabeth Gerberich, and Shannon Faseler join us. This is a special edition where we're collaborating with PrintAustin. So each of these artists uses printmaking in some way in their artwork. Each of them will give us 10-minute presentations, letting us know a little bit more about their work, what's coming up, and what they're doing in their studio. They'll have 10 minutes, and at the end of each presentation, we'll have a time for question and answers at the end. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them after the artists have finished presenting. Today, we're going to start with Hannah Spector.
Okay, thank you. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Spector, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist and poet and educator. I teach at UT and Texas State, and I also work as a community printmaking instructor at Flatbed Press. I came to printmaking originally through bookmaking, and I studied poetry and literature and writing in my undergraduate degree, and I found myself making artist books as my final projects, and I learned how to silkscreen to make covers, and my love of printmaking evolved from there and took me to where I am today. But this is a piece called Bunny Sex, and it's the first silkscreen that I ever made, and it was just a really simple 2-layer silkscreen. But my poetry started to make its way into the images, and this is a character that I would often draw called Slop Man. So it reads, "It was dark in there, too dark to see my teeth or your teeth or the reflection of my teeth in my teeth. I was scared." And in graduate school, I really brought my writing into the work. So this was a map I made about longing, or I thought of it as a map of an unknowable feeling. It's a risograph print, and I was just really centering the writing in the work. So from here, there's a really big gap from that period of time till now. But for the past 4 years or so, I've really fallen in love with copper plate etching, which is where you bite or etch lines into a copper plate with ferric acid. And the process can be really painterly and beautiful in its airs. And I'll walk you through the evolution of how a print kind of starts off and what it becomes. So the words don't make their way into the images as much, but they accompany and inform them now, my poetry. And when I go to make a composition, I'm imagining more of a poetic landscape within this. So I do make performance and video as well, and I'm always writing poetry, and etchings are just another way that I feel I can give rise to these different poetic landscapes. This one came out of a period of insomnia, which I often have, where I was writing a lot about houses and the interior of houses and how the house can be like a body or the body can become like a house. And my poems had symbols of ladders and eggs and shoes, all the things that you see before you. And I was reading a lot of Marcel Proust. This piece is entitled Marcel. So it started off here. And then I added aqua tint to the plate, which is that tooth and tone you can see. And then I added acid directly onto the plate as a flat bite to make it feel more worn or aged. And then I was doing a demo in class of sheen clay, which is paper that you put on top of a plate. And when it goes through the press, it binds to the paper and you can draw on top of it. So it's a way to make varied editions of a print. And I used orange ink, which I would never normally use, but I really liked it. And so I started to experiment with the sheen clay until it reached its final form here. And again, with Marcel, I was making these etchings of my ideal performance landscapes as if I could perform in any room, what would it look like? And I think it would look something like this. And I was breaking the edge of the construction with the sheen clay coming off of it and drawing on top of it and using a really heavily saturated and inked plate. This is another recent piece called Midnight Language. It's also a hypothetical sketch for a performance. I had been writing a lot about a candle dripping back and forth to form another candle and then dripping back and forth to reform the other candle and this infinite loop. And I was struck by an image of being covered in a large folded sheet of paper with candles melting all over it. And I was thinking of it as a durational performance piece. And I was envisioning that performance floating in space, which you can see as that soap ground, swirly cosmos in the background. So from here, body empty. Here, I added in tone. And then I began to play with the sheen clay. This was after I did Marcel, so I was interested in ways I could mess with the edge of the plate and the edge of the paper too. Here's some other recent pieces. This is a sketch of a performance. Consider it maybe the closest thing to a self-portrait that I've ever done. It's an etching. This is a linoleum cut, a performance sketch for 2 bodies. This is an etching of a word that kept popping up in my poems, and I wanted to understand the shape of it better. So I would ink one plate and print it until it disappeared. This is a figure that kept popping up in my poems and also in my dreams. This is an etching of a video still from a video that I made. And I kept finding myself returning to this image and wanting to understand it more clearly and slow it down. So I made an etching of it. This is a dream landscape. And this is a memory of that dream landscape. And this is an etching of being able to get mangoes out of season, even when it's really cold. And now in the studio, I'm working on a book. So these are 2 different maquettes of hypothetical books, which I then decided I liked this book form. And I made a larger version of it. And this is the first plate, which I haven't printed yet, but I'm really excited to print this detail up here. It's coming out of some writing that I did at a residency this past summer, which there's little short stories about a hypothetical woman in history on a certain day. So, oh, and these are also some small illustration plates that are going in the book as well. I'll move through drawings that have been encircling the writing and are also going to be present in the book. I'll read you 3 of them as I scroll through the drawings that are soon to be translated. On this day in 1992, a woman dropped a carton of eggs into a lake, and all of the fish surfaced, and all of them thanked her, and all of them loved her, and she joined them, and she is still there in that lake. On this day in 1921, a woman followed a trail of ants all the way up a mountain. And when she reached the top, a thunderstorm crescendoed and she was washed back down the mountain, and she never trusted an ant again. And this last one. On this day in 1220, a woman awoke to find herself exhaling a thick black smoke. And it continued for several days until her entire house was filled with smoke. And she was so comforted in this blanket of smoke that she never again left her house, and now allows objects to appear and disappear out of the thick fog, a constant tension of surprise and pleasure. So I'm working on this book currently, and I think I'm not sure how long it will take me, but yeah, that's all I have for you all today. And I want to thank Women in Their Work and PrintAustin for having me.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Next up, we have Elizabeth.
Hey all, thank you, Hannah, and thank you to Women in Their Work and to PrintAustin for having me. I'm just going to share my screen really quick. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so again, thanks to Women in Their Working for PrintAustin. I'm really glad to be here today. I am fairly new to like the professional art world and printmaking in general. So I'll be talking a little bit about how I got into print and what I've been doing lately. A little bit about me. I grew up in New Jersey, and I came to school to UT to study anthropology and Latin American studies. And I've stayed here since. I've been in Austin for about the past 10 years. And I have always, like, when I was a kid, I always drew and painted, but left art behind in college, really, and got back into it after I had graduated. I was working in immigration legal services I started in 2016, and I was doing casework and outreach, and at one point also volunteer coordination, and it was a lot of really difficult and stressful work with a lot of high stakes involved. And I realized that I was spending like a ton of time, like we all do, on our phones. And I needed a way to get out of, to not have anything, to not have any screens in the room. And I ended up in a dark room at the Doherty Art Center. And I, for also a little bit of context, my dad is a photographer. I had been trying to stay away from doing film work for a while, somehow found my way back into it, because, you wouldn't be able to get any like notifications, any screen time, because the light from anything would be, or the light from screens would ruin the photo exposure and the prints that you're trying to make. And I, from there, started doing some more of the community art classes at the Doherty Art Center, took some acrylic classes and some drawing classes and workshops. And I was really excited and had signed up for a screen printing workshop at the Contemporary that was set to start in March 2020. And we all know what happened after that. It quickly got canceled. And I had been really excited to do that because I had some experience in a like rec camp in the town next to the town I grew up in, doing some silk screening. And I remember really loving just like the process of pulling the squeegee. So after that had been canceled, I had done some more of the Contemporary's online programming, and once they opened back up to in-person classes, I signed up again for the screen printing workshop and immediately fell in love. These are the two first silk screen prints that I did with the Contemporary. I realized that I really loved the process of being able to replicate an image in multiple colorways over and over again. I just like really loved the process of mass production. This is a picture that I had taken from a previous trip to the Monterey Bay Aquarium with all of the moon jellies. And I, of course, being a child of the 90s, also grew up with Modest Mouse and that Modest Mouse song, and was really just thinking about you know, trying to make it through the past couple of years of pandemic and all that entailed, and just that image of a jellyfish floating along. And so then I started again thinking about how I could take print and print processes and work with them in at home. I don't have I don't have a studio space other than my apartment. I work full-time as a library assistant. And I was trying to, you know, see what else I could get into on my own in my spare time, with a work schedule that didn't allow me to make it into a print studio regularly, and started to experiment with some lino cut. This is from also another road trip out to West Texas. And I realized that I liked also the replication and the ability to work with different colorways and different materials while working with like the same base image. And then lately I've been doing, I got into sun printing, and I have been working a lot with that the past several months. In 2020, actually between 2020 and 2021, I did 2 cross-country moves and have just a ton of pictures of the road from that and a couple of other trips I had taken. And I realized that with this ink that you can put on the paper and let the sun expose, have been really loving using the pictures that I had taken from the road from there. And using the like power of the sun, which I like don't have to have any special like chemicals to work with. I don't have to have a dark room in my house. I can use in my like little apartment patio, and then just wash the excess ink off of the prints after that, or after exposing them for the correct amount of time. And it's easy to work with, again, with my work schedule. So I started doing more of this. This is another one that I had taken from West Texas as well. I guess also like Hannah, I realized that I was bringing words into my printmaking as well. I had been, with my first silkscreened image, you know, thinking that I would like the ability to be able to replicate text, like typed text. And at some point, when I was exposing these negatives, or exposing, these negatives via sun printing, that I actually liked handwriting text a lot more, and that I had been thinking even about when I was writing papers in school, I would always start off with a like handwritten text, and like I would handwrite my papers and then type them again. And I think the finding, I really like how Hannah spoke about finding the shape of the words, like finding the shape of these words I had been thinking about over and over again, has been cathartic, I guess, to put on top of images that I had also been thinking about a lot. And then currently I'm back to screen printing. I'm taking a workshop with the ASPCO, and I am in the middle of doing some poster printing with them. This is not quite yet finished. I'm going to do a second color process on Saturday, and so I'll have some more images of that hopefully soon. And I will be participating also in a mail art project with a collective called the Snail Mail Art Collective. It's going to be a year-long project with 3 tracks of 12 artists, so it'll be 36 in total. And each month we mail each other a piece, or each month we mail each other part of a piece that we've worked on. So in total, there's 12 pieces, and there'll be an online exhibition in the winter once we're all done. So in December or January of this year, we'll be exhibiting all of the pieces we've all collectively worked on. And that's really all I have. Here is my information to follow along, to see what I'm up to next. And I'd like to also, again, thank Women in Their Work in PrintAustin for having me.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. And our third presenter is Shannon Faseler.
Here we go. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, PrintAustin and Women in Their Work. It's an honor to be here with these other great artists. I appreciate seeing their work a lot. I'm especially thankful that Hannah explained copperplate etching so that I don't have to, because I don't think I could. I am a native of Texas. I went away for grad school to Chicago and then moved to California for a number of years. Found myself returning to Austin, where I received my undergrad. I've taught at UT. I'm currently teaching at Texas State University, and I found my way into printmaking. In undergrad at UT, you had to take a printmaking class as part of your curriculum. And I took the class and we went through all of the printmaking methods, and I was terribly bored because I was falling in love with painting at the time and I had no room in my life for anything else. So it wasn't until I was living in California, and one of the schools that I was teaching with had a new printmaking instructor who I had known. They just hired him, and he asked if I wanted to come play in the studio, and I said sure. So I went into the studio, and he had these 24 by 30 inch copper plates that he said, if you want these copper plates, if you want to bring them back to life, they're yours. And I said, that'll be fun. At that time, I was really interested, and I still am really interested in process and kind of the more old and labor intensive, and the more the process yields to accident and intervention. I'm really interested in that. So my content for the majority of my adult life has been ecology, environment, and climate change, and where that intersects with culture. And this is the 24 by 30 copper plate etching and engraving and aquatint that I've been working on for several years, since 2015. And it was based on Livia's dining room frescoes from the Archaeological Museum in Rome. I was very much interested in the idea of bringing the landscape in and thereby preserving it for eternity in fresco, and how those landscapes that she was looking at when she had those frescoes painted for her dining room don't exist anymore. And taking that kind of inspiration and then merging that with some of my more recent work, which is icebergs and glacial recession. So that's what this is over here. One of the things that frustrates some printmakers about my work is I don't like multiples. So when I make a print, I just make the one, and that's how it starts out, with just being one. I have no interest in making multiples ever. I like the process. I like going through the motions. I like playing with the proofs and working things out. But then I'm a one and done printmaker, which seems counterintuitive, but I really do like the process. So that piece, I believe I'm done with this plate. I don't think I'm going to beat this anymore. But I wanted to show you some of my more recent prints and how they kind of work in conversation with my paintings. So I recently became fascinated with mezzotints and Mananois. And in my studio, I was building these layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of opaque pigment and then oil paint, and then sanding back through or pulling back out these images. And I wanted that to translate into the prints. So this is another aquatint etching, blacking out the entire plate and then burnishing back through to pull the images out. I like the moodiness of it. I like the graininess of it. It feels like photograph. It feels like drawing. To me, it feels there, but not there. And I'm really drawn to that kind of feeling. This is another aquatint. Let's see if I can zoom in here. I'm sorry. I don't know if I can. And this was where I tend to always want to make the media do what it doesn't want to do. And I really wanted white ink, and white ink just doesn't ever turn out white on a copper plate. The chemical reaction doesn't let it happen. So I was trying to get a white kind of halo around these iceberg forms, and it didn't work, but I ended up liking some of the other colors that I was working with in the end. So this print in particular was done at the same time as this painting series, where I was creating these kind of ghost images of, I'm really interested in negative and positive space and things along those lines. So all of my forms and shapes come from, most recently come from Antarctica, and specifically a couple of glacial ice shelves that have calved large icebergs in the last 5 years. So I'm looking at NASA images from satellites, and I'm looking at statistics from different science journals about the sizes of these things and the shapes of these things, and kind of tracking their movements. So this is from Sheldon Glacier, this particular series. And this is another one of those icebergs. That's another copper plate aquatint. Mananois. So, and again, I'm really drawn to I am drawn to media that feels painterly when it is not painterly, very much so. More recently, I've been again doing these paintings where I build and build and build and build and build, and then kind of scratch back through, revealing things. This one it's a little hard to read, but this is the edge of Sheldon Glacier, the outline of Sheldon Glacier in Antarctica. And I think more recently, they've gotten more and more simplified. The one iceberg that I was following for a really long time was this one. It was called A68A, and it recently dissolved completely into water. So I started thinking about like these ice forms when they no longer exist, or they've been changed into another shape, form of being. What does that look like? And what does it look like from space? And what does it look like from above? And what can you still see and what remains? So after I did this series, the A68, I started doing these reductive paintings that are, again, looking from above down at the ocean and seeing the remnants of these pieces of ice. What is funny about these paintings is I started making them around the same time as the Webb telescope started publishing all of these images of space. And I don't know if that was subconscious or not, but a lot of people do see space or the solar system. I think that's fine, because to me, the ocean is a reflection of its environment. So that works for me. But this is currently where I'm working in oil painting, is in this reductive way, using those same shapes, icebergs and glaciers. and continuing to work Manunua and printmaking as I go forward. When I'm able to get in the print studio, all of my plates right now are underground, so I don't plan on getting to them this semester, but soon. And I just had a couple more of the kind of iceberg glacial climate series. I recently returned from a residency I did over the winter in Assisi, where my work is about to take a shift. I've been interested in Italy and Greece and cultural preservation, as I do teach a lot of art history. And I'm very much interested in what climate change is doing to these places that are incredibly vulnerable, specifically Italy and Greece, because of their connection to the oceans. And I've been working on a project about Venice for a really long time, but when I was in Assisi, I started to think about droughts and extreme climate and how that affects the agriculture and basically the foundations of these buildings. So where I'm going from here is a body of work that is not just thinking about ice and glaciers, but also thinking about sea level rise and extreme weather and how that impacts cultural heritage and cultural preservation and where we go from there. I tend to always work in an abstract language. I want to reference the subject, but not in a literal photorealistic way, because I think there are some amazing photographs of icebergs and glaciers out there. So, why would I want to repeat that? But I do think that the next phase of my work is going to go in a different direction, and my palette will definitely be changing away from these beautiful icy blues and greens into something a little more earthy. So I think that should sum it up for me. I think, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Nice. And I'll also drop Shannon's Instagram into the chat along with Elizabeth and Hannah's, so you guys can follow with them. And now I just wanted to open up the meeting for questions, discussions that anybody might have for our wonderful three artists. It was such a great presentation. You guys feel free to drop any questions in the chat and then I can present them, or also if you feel like asking the question yourself, then please feel free, and we would love to hear your voice. So anybody can just go ahead. I feel like I might have seen somebody's hand up, but yes.
Hi, this is Judith. I wanted to mention to Shannon that, and thank you all for your presentations. It's really great. This is a great program. That there's a big article in the New York Times today about the Thwaites glacier or Thwaites, iceberg. And this woman scientist has developed a camera that can they can now do a robot camera and send it down in the levels of the glacier and go under and look at it from below. So I just want to point that out to you. It's really fantastic, interesting images. So I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, thank you, Judith. I really appreciate that. I haven't had a chance to look at the Times today, but I will get on that. That sounds fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, Kathy in the chat says that they love the stories of how all three of y'all found your way to printmaking. And I kind of also wanted to talk, since all three of you guys are also working in other forms of media, like painting and performance, and also Elizabeth with your dad's background in photography and your use of words and lyrics throughout your work. I'm wondering how printmaking informs these other practices. It's very process-based as well as painting can be as well. And especially with performance, I thought was interesting, Hannah, how you're mapping out future performances. I'm wondering if after doing the performance, if the print is affected, or maybe after doing a painting, if that print that inspired the painting is affected too. So that's kind of an open question for the three of y'all.
Sure, I can start. I feel that it's more of just like before I do a performance or I make a video, I often will draw out images that I want to happen, because working from poetry is so imagistic and a lot of my work is imagistic. So they're kind of performance landscapes that I don't really know if they could ever exist. Like, of course, me floating in space, I'm not going to be, unless I use some green screen or something like that. But they're a way for me to free up and kind of detach from the poetry and make it more of an atmosphere. Especially with copper plate etching, I feel that, like Shannon's saying, there is such a painterly quality to it that I get to live inside of the poetic feeling. And then that helps me perform, and that helps me figure out the mood of the performance a lot better.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I actually have a question for Hannah Spector. As far as poetry goes, when you originally started to write, who was your initial inspiration? I'm very curious. I always love hearing about that.
The first poem that I heard that made me change my major from journalism to poetry was, it's kind of a classic one, but it's Frank O'Hara's Having a Coke with You. And it was a TA played it for me in undergrad, and it was a video of him reading it. And I'm trying to think, and then Lorca. I read a lot of Lorca and became very into Lorca and Leonard Cohen, as I believe he's a poet just as much as he's a songwriter.
Awesome, thank you.
I was going to address the previous question, just to talk about, like, for me, I'm always going to be very process driven. And like I said earlier, the like older the process, the better. I actually make frescoes, and I love thinking about materials and process. And printmaking to me is such, especially intaglio and etching, is such a process, and it really hasn't changed that much over the years. And so when I'm working in painting, I work in a very traditional glazing with layers in a very traditional academic way. And I felt like, and I feel like I've been painting for long enough that I have a pretty tremendous amount of control over the material. And one of the things that I like about printmaking is I can also work in a reductive or an additive way, but I feel like I have no control over the material. Printmaking forces me to let go and kind of just, embrace the mistakes, embrace the plate, embrace what the acid wants to do that day, embrace what the ink wants to do that day. And I really am drawn to that also. But they're both, currently I'm working in reductive ways on both of them. So I kind of go back and forth, but to me, they're separate. I don't do one in preparation for the other. They kind of complement one another in conversation like that.
Nice, thank you.
That was beautifully said about letting go of control. I feel like that gap within printmaking is what makes it so interesting, what makes it so different.
Yeah, it's nice to hear, because I feel like I don't have as much experience with printmaking, but it seems so can be so fastidious, or there's so many aspects or steps that you feel like you have to get right. And also, I guess, similar to the way a photograph develops in a dark room and the use of chemicals and everything. So it's nice to hear that there's kind of a seizing or ceding control and letting that material kind of speak for itself. So it's very insightful.
Yeah, I really liked how you talked about ceding control, Shannon. I think that's one of the things that I think drew me to the darkroom, and it's also like kept me in printmaking, is that it forces you to slow down, and it forces you to say, okay, well, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. What can we do with it? And it's just, I think I was talking to somebody when I was at like a night session at Flatbed. And she was talking about how she's like, I love printmaking because I can, like, it's like drawing but slower, and there's this element of like, you can't be like rushing to do anything, or like it is like like time is an important part of the process, not only in like how long you're exposing a screen or a plate or what have you, but in like the actual physical like pulling of prints and everything. And yeah, I feel like that's another, I don't know, another element of that seating control for me is making sure, I don't know, I have the time, or to like I don't know, time somehow time and control feel like really linked for me.
Nice. Right. There any other questions in the chat? Nice mention of the chemistry, Shannon, also. Oh, nice. Mila Sketch wants to know if the three of y'all are having any upcoming shows and where. And I know, Elizabeth, you also mentioned your snail mail project, which is very cool too. If you want to speak more about that as well.
Yeah, the snail mail project will be, once it's all done, it's 36 of us in total, and there'll be like 3 different groups that'll be like part of the collective showing, and it'll be a virtual show, likely in December, if not January of 2024. And it'll each of us started with 1 piece on an 8.5 by 11 like regular sheet of paper, and it'll come back to us after going through the group of 12 artists who are adding or reducing in whatever they see fit to the piece, and that'll be the final results plus documentation of the process will be what is in the virtual show at the end.
I'm in a group show at Flatbed in April. And I'm also teaching a workshop there on aquatint. If anyone is interested, you can go to the website. It's Dry Point and Aquatint, and it's in April. I believe it's the 15th and 16th. And then my next show that's in town is at a local DIY spot called Shed Shows, and it will be in the beginning of July.
That's great. I'm gonna look for your workshop. So I have nothing upcoming, and it's a good thing, because after this residency over the winter, I really am gonna make a shift, and I need some time to think about what that is and how that works. I had several shows in the second half of the year, 2022, and the last one came down while I was out of the country, and I'm looking forward to having some time just to kind of live in my head for a little while and do some research and think about where these things are going. But I have a website and on Instagram and on my website. If I have something that comes up, I'll be sure to put it there. But right now, nothing is slated, and I'm hoping to start a new body of work this weekend.
I also forgot that I have a show up at the Visual Arts Center at UT, or I have a piece in a group show. that's up at the Visual Arts Center right now.
Nice. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what the future holds for y'all. And I just wanted to wrap the meeting and presentations up with some women in their work upcoming announcements. They're in the chat as well, but tonight at the gallery, there's going to be a opera performance as a part of Austin Opera. It's called La Noche de Opera. It starts at 7 and there's still time to get your tickets. They're $35 a piece, and that info can be found on our website and Instagram. And then this Saturday, we're having a poetry tea time with our current exhibiting artist, Jade Walker. And that's going to be, I believe, from 3 to 5, but there will be tea, there will be poetry. It's also very child friendly as well. And yeah, so that should be good. And that show is going to be ending on the 23rd. So please come in, and you don't want to miss it before it closes. But other than that, thank you again so much to our 3 presenters. They're really wonderful, and it was really great to hear everybody talk about their art as well as their process. So yeah, that's it for me. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their Thursday. Stays warm. Stay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.